Hello everyone, my name is Achila Yona and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Yay! And if you are new here, welcome. I'm super excited to have you join us for today. As you may know, I hate talking about slavery. It is the main focus point of Black Indigenous people's history, and I try not to talk about it so much. Why? Too many people view Black American history as slave history, and that's not entirely true. There were many of us that, yes, indeed, descended from being prisoners of war. However, there are many of us that descended from business owners, philanthropists, scientists, entrepreneurs. The list goes on. But like with history, the people who won the battle get to write the script. If I'm going to talk about slavery in this topic, I might as well give y'all the facts and not the watered down half truths we were taught in school. But first, let's discuss Black Indigenous people history before slavery. We were free from taxes, persecution, and racism. We had our own civilizations like the Olmecs, the Maya, the Toltec, the Mississippian cultures, and so on. We grew corn, traded amongst each other. Although a lot of nations did get along, there were some that was at war when the Europeans came, like the Algonquin and the Iroquois. It doesn't stop there. We even went to war with Asian settlers that came and invaded America years before Pale people came. Some people think the Asians, who we now refer to as natives, have been here longer in America, and even in some cases longer than the Black Indigenous peoples. But obviously, we call that a bluff. Furthermore, due to our battles amongst ourselves and foreigners, troubled weighed in even more when Europeans came into the picture. They saw us all feuding and decided to exploit our fights and fund the wars we had with each other. And of course, natives cashed in on this too because they were more in the colonizer's image and were also willing and eager to overthrow our power structures and civilizations. What's even worse was that Black Indians enslaved each other and eventually themselves. The Iroquois preyed on Shawnee people and sold them into slavery. Iroquois not only did this, but captured and enslaved the Miami. Check this out. They were presented with beaver skins to let the Shawnee captives go. And girl, they kept the beaver skins and didn't let nan one person go. The Seneca enslaved captives taken from the tribes of Carolina and Florida. Now let's pause for a second. Now, do y'all see why I say we don't come from just one tribe? Not only because we have over 1 million ancestors, but Black Indigenous people were being sold off into slavery, killed, or adopted into said captive tribe. Okay, or should I say, into said slave catchers tribe. You thinking you come from one tribe, whole time they probably stole you from your peoples and never stopped to mention that detail. It is estimated that between 1492 and 1880, between 2 and 5.5 million Black Indigenous people were enslaved in the Americas. During the King Philip's War, Black Indigenous people were shipped to various lands as slaves, including, but not limited to, Barbados, Bermuda, Jamaica, Spain, Africa, and even parts of the South Pacific. Indians were enslaved in mass numbers and were sent locally or overseas and reclassified as Black, Negro, or African. There are records of descendants of Indigenous people first enslaved during the King Philip's War in the 1740s. But due to small legal loopholes and dishonest practices, these small services turned into a lifetime full of slavery. In 1676, Connecticut officials declared an originally slave term can be extended but not shortened. Bummer, right? Of course. Since labor was at an all-time high, so was the search to purchase slaves. American Indians were enslaved and had to work mines, plantations, be apprentices for artisans, and also served as domestic indentured servants. Okay, and also not to I want to mention too is that what colonizers would do, they would raid our villages and kill our men, kill our way of life. And when the women or children are now deserted, the men are died and they taken as prisoners of war. These women and children had to survive by, putting themselves into indentured servitude, just to have food or a place to sleep or, whatever. So, yes, that's what I meant by Indians enslaving themselves. Okay. There are Sioux Indians from Minnesota, from the Minnesota region, that could be found enslaved in Quebec, Choctaws from Mississippi and New England, and even Indian slaves from Utah and Colorado south into Mexico. Crazy, right? About 650,000 Indians in the coastal Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and Honduras area were enslaved in the 16th century. The Spanish introduced another term of slavery where the Indian is bound to Pacific lands rather than landlords. Excuse me if I do not pronounce this right because it's a Spanish term and I don't speak Spanish. But they call this Yenakanohe. Under the Encomienda system, Indians were forced to pay a tribute to the encomendero or do forced labor. And encomendero provides the laborers protection from warring tribes and the teachings in the Catholic faith. I don't know about y'all, but this is giving me the Christian Black Codes of 1724 vibes, which is an act that was used to further control Indigenous Black people after they were emancipated. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the deerskin trade because this was also very important when it comes to indigenous slavery. Okay, so through the 1680s to early 1800s, Mississippi was a part of a huge southeastern regional trade in deerskins. Deerskin is a vital asset in indigenous culture. We use this for various things, for shirts, moccasins, breechcloths, and more. The deerskin trade embraced or encouraged, I should say, colonialism of the frontier and had a depleting effect on Black Indian people. The peltry trade further eroded our self sufficiency and eventually led us to be forced to rely on European trade goods and lifestyle. The massive deer hunt took place in late autumn for the Indians of the Southeast when villages scattered into small bands to various hunting grounds. Only enough deer were slaughtered in the early years of the trade to provide the band with enough meat, fat, and skins and to buy a few European trade goods, right? However, with human nature kicks in and people start getting greedy. Before rum was on the rise, the trade had limitations, right? People are like, oh no, respect nature. We just don't get what we need, okay? Once rum sales skyrocketed, the overhunting of deer did as well. And the analysis of the Choctaw trade at the end of the 18th century. The credit system was another malicious entity that was introduced by the deerskin trade. Yes, the credit system was introduced by the way of the deerskin trade. Oh my God, y'all. Oh my God. Items were loaned to individuals or a band leader in exchange for the return of deer hides after the fall hunt. Debt repayment was contingent on the season's success, individual hunters' skills, and the hunters' eagerness to repay their debts. Before skins went to the trading posts, competing traders would use rum to persuade the hunting bands to buy the season's harvest. The pressure on Black Indigenous Americans to sell their lands rose as the need to settle trade debts grew. Okay. When the Yamasee first came across the Spanish in the 16th century, they were a Muskogean speaking Aborigine nation residing in what is now southern Georgia and northern Florida. The Yamasees went north in South Carolina in 1687, dissatisfied with the Spanish occupation and how they governed our stolen lands. The Yamasees allied with the British colonists in South Carolina and traded with the British. Indigenous slaves were one of the most valuable hot commodities for the British in the late 17th and early 18th century. Aborigines were sold at slave markets or worked on colonizers' plantations. By 1708, English colonizers enslaved 1,400 Indians, which grew to 1,850 by 1715. Between 24,000 and 51,000 prisoners of war have been taken by British slavers since 1680. They sent the majority of the Indian prisoners of war to New England or the Caribbean. The Yamasee were heavily involved in the British slave trade and even did slave raids against other indigenous people in the Spanish territories of Florida until they suffered the same fate. Okay? St. Augustine reported that there were 10,000 to 12,000 Florida Indians that have been enslaved by the Carolinians and other Indian people. Like in many cases, when you lay down with dogs, you get fleas. The Yamasee thought they saw a friend in British, but it turns out that friend was murderous, vicious, psychopathic that was sent to destroy and conquer. Yes, I said that right. Yes, stalker, right? Like we didn't know he was murderous and vicious and just horrid. We didn't know that. But no, seriously. Even though the British was an ally to the Yamasee, it did not necessarily mean that they were two peas in a pod. Okay, because remember, colonizers came to conquer. Okay, and if they had to lie, steal, kill, and all the other stuff to get the land, to keep the land, they're gonna do that. You know, so the Yamasee would soon find out the British ain't nothing but the two C's, coins and conquering. That's all they about. They about the two C's, coins and conquering. The Yamasee saw the British become greedy, irresponsible, and violent, and this is what drives a wedge between the two allies. For several years, the Pale people, slave traders, would run up the debt for pots, pans, and guns. And when the Yamasee couldn't pay, they would demand women and children and take them into Charleston town to sell them. Or, I'm sorry, Charlestown to sell them. This would carry on for 10 years, y'all, 10 years, until finally the Yamasee are fed up. On April 14th, 1715, at a village of Pocataligo, South Carolina's Indian agent Thomas Maine met with the Yamasee chiefs along with former Indian agent John Wright and others. They spent the evening drinking rum, feasting, and talking about the trade issues they were experiencing. The Yamasee bound Nain, y'all, they bound Nain to a post in the middle of the village pierced his body with lighted splinters, and slowly burned him to death. This marked the beginning of the Yamasee War. After this, the British got a 3-for-1 combo of an ass whooping. Okay, because not just the Yamasee were coming for them, but the Creeks and the Choctaws as well. Shout out to my Choctaw people out there. Hello, how you doing? Um, yeah, the Choctaw and the Creeks, they killed traders, in their towns and surrounding towns, and also attacked several plantations too. Okay, 7% of colonial population were killed in the war. That's about 400 English colonists. A militia in South Carolina was formed in response to this. Enslaved Black indigenous people, volunteers from Virginia and North Carolina, and their Indian allies joined the militia. South Carolina was aided in their war against the Yamasee by 70 Tuscaroras. The campaign against the Indians was characterized as brutal. Archaeologist David Moore writes in his book Catawba Valley, Mississippian Ceramics, Chronology in Catawba. I need to pronounce it right. I'm sorry if I'm not saying your name right. Indians reports that the Congarees, the Santees, the Sioux, um, and others suffered devastating losses. The British and their allies continued to attack the Yamasee for the next 2 years, driving them out of their own homelands. Many survivors fled to Florida and joined the Catawba, okay, Confederacy in the north. Those who fled to Florida allied with the Spanish once more. The Yamasee Wars came to an end in 1718 when the British colonists and the Indian nation signed a peace accord. This resulted in the ending of Indian slavery. However, not all Indians were freed or stopped being captured and being taken as prisoners of war. Colonists then decided to enforce paper genocide as a way to solve this problem, and for a while it worked. Colonists would still capture and enslave American Indian people and reclassify them as Black, Negro, colored, or even African. For example, okay, because anytime when we talk about paper genocide, people are like, they're just like, well, I don't get it. Like, if they're Indian, why would they call them anything other than Indian? However, we all did not originally call ourselves Indian. We called ourselves by our tribal name, and anything calling us other than our tribal name is paper genocide. Get it? Okay. For example, officials had a taste to reclassify the Narragansetts as Black or Negro. Okay, knowing that they are indigenous tribe, they're continuously calling them Black or Negro. Okay, paper genocide was already a wide practice used even still to this day to misidentify and erase indigenous people's identity and existence. For example, Spence Johnson was born a member of Choctaw Nation in Indian Territory in the 1850s. Spence and his mother was stolen and sold at an auction at Shreveport to Raleigh Surratt. Even though we are told slavery no longer exists, we can obviously see the effects it has on our society today. Okay. Um, y'all, so I know I pretty much said a mouthful in this video, but I had to like go over it because I'm like, you know what? Just because I don't want to talk about slavery does not mean that other people don't talk about slavery. There's still many people that had family members that descended from slavery. Well, I don't say descended from slavery, but that were captured and sold as prisoners of war. Okay, so I get it. I get it, and Slavery is such a talked about subject, but I feel like people don't really know about it. They don't really understand it or know. Um, like for example, the credit system. I had no idea the credit system was linked to the deerskin trade. I'm like, oh my God, like why is it so impossible to make it ahead in America? Whole time they put us on a credit system like how they did our ancestors. And see, that is a form of slavery. Like we're literally learning that these things that they forced on our ancestors were things to keep them into slavery or bound them to slavery. And people think that this only affects us. No, it affects everybody because not everybody got a credit score. Everybody has to be judged by a number. Okay, like you have to, um, get a loan just to get ahead in society. And I find this crazy. I find this crazy, but it makes sense. It makes sense. I hope that we have all learned something today. Because I know when it comes to history, they don't like teaching us history, and especially with stuff like this. Texas is no longer or trying to not talk about Native American history, but they wasn't teaching us stuff like this anyway. So it's not like we're missing out on much. But even then, this just shows me how much history repeats. You know, um, the fact that we were fighting amongst each other and we allied with the very people that were sent to destroy us and conquer our lands. And still to this day, our people still do it. They do it and they don't think that they're selling out. They don't think that it's an issue, and it is an issue. You know, it's crazy, but you know what? That's how they rise to power. You know, they find people who are beefing, and they're like, hey, like they that crooked salesman, like, hey, I can sell you this gun, I can do this, I can do that, but I need this in return, or blah blah blah. And that's how we get sucked up into this mess. And I know that we talk a lot of mess about each other and even the natives too, but look at how our actions got us all here today. We did all that fighting over the land, all that fighting for what? Because now we have a full-blown invasion, and we got to act like it's not happening, but it is. So really think about these things, y'all. Really think about history and how things repeat itself, because we act like we're not like our ancestors, but it's so easy to fall into the same patterns and the same traps. This is why we have to break generational trauma and curses, y'all. This and actually this reminds me so much about the whole Crips in the blood, um, battles and wars that are going on in America, because gang banging is still very so prevalent in our communities. And I know y'all probably thought throughout the whole video, like, okay, well, why were we just selling each other? Like, why wasn't we viewing each other as, brothers and sisters and all this other stuff? Why did we sell off each other's slavery? Because we didn't see each other as one people, okay? And for good reason sometimes too, because you have people coming over from various lands or from different parts of the country and settle and start causing problems or whatever. So whatever issues our ancestors have with certain people, I get it. I understand, but I understand also how it got us to where we at today, because I was using terms like originally Black Indigenous, Black Indian, Indian, American Indian. I know I was using those terms, and I was using those terms for y'all to understand that these are paper genocidal terms that were used to erase the identity of our people. However, a lot of people know us by these terms. So I'm using these terms interchangeably so you can understand that these were terms they were using to call us. And they may try to act like it's different people when really it's the same people. It's really the same people. But they just use all these different words like Negro and Indian to make it seem like it's just two different people, and it's not. They were the same people. The only difference is one of them was labeled as a Negro and the other one was labeled as Indian. But let me know what y'all guys think in the comment section. Feel free to add more information. The more information, the merrier. So I love y'all guys and thank y'all guys for watching. And hey, don't forget to subscribe and like and share this video. Because I know you be leaving and you don't be liking and sharing shit. So like, share, comment. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe. All right. I love you. Make good choices. Make good decisions. Be nice to thy neighbor. Or should I say, love thy neighbor. Okay. And strive to be a better person every day. Learn from your mistakes. Learn from your ancestors' mistakes. Be safe. Take care. Love y'all. Bye-bye.